There comes a moment, quiet, invisible to the world, when a person gets tired of not recognizing the person in the mirror, tired of breaking promises to themselves, tired of shrinking to fit places they've outgrown, tired of living inside a version of themselves that was shaped by survival, not by truth. That moment, that's where identity begins, not in comfort, not in applause, but in the raw decision to become someone that even your past doesn't recognize. This isn't about building confidence. Confidence is just the echo. This is about building conviction, an identity that doesn't beg for validation. It commands it silently, unapologetically, because it was forged in fire. And here's the truth most won't say. Your identity is not discovered. It is constructed. Brick by brick, standard by standard, decision by ruthless, irreversible decision. You want to be unshakable. Then start with this. No one is coming to give you permission to become the version of you that keeps whispering beneath the noise. You must choose that identity, and you must kill everything that contradicts it. Because what you tolerate, you become. And what you repeat, you reinforce. If your life looks like hesitation, avoidance, inconsistency, it's not because you lack motivation. It's because your identity is still being negotiated with your past. Let me tell you something bold. The world doesn't respond to your desires. It responds to your self-concept. Not what you want, what you believe you are worthy of, what you believe you are capable of, what you believe is normal for someone like you. That's why two people can have the same goal, but one reaches it and the other self-sabotages the second it starts working. Why? Because identity always pulls you back to its set point. You don't rise to the level of your potential, you fall to the level of your self-concept. And the only way to shift it is to stop asking the world who you are and start declaring it to yourself with every small, unseen decision. Every time you wake up early when you could sleep in identity. Every time you walk away from drama instead of fueling it identity. Every time you speak truth instead of performance identity. You want to become unstoppable? Then build standards so high even your old self can't survive inside them. Let me ask you something. When was the last time you kept a promise to yourself so consistently that your nervous system began to believe you again? When was the last time you set a boundary and actually upheld it even when it got uncomfortable? When was the last time you stopped chasing motivation and started mastering your identity through the mundane? We glorify breakthrough. We idolize peak moments, but identity isn't built on breakthroughs. It's built in the trenches. You become unshakable when your habits are no longer a reaction to your emotions, but a reflection of your non-negotiables. It's not glamorous, it's not loud, it's not viral. It's when you brush your teeth and listen to affirmations instead of scrolling. It's when you show up to the gym when your body says no, but your spirit says go. It's when you get on your knees to pray, even when you feel forgotten. That's when heaven starts watching. That's when identity starts shifting. That's when your life starts echoing something different. Because now you're not living by default. You're living by design. Not just what you do, but who you are while you do it. That's the root. That's the seed that eventually becomes the forest. You want an unshakable identity? Then you need to stop romanticizing transformation and start respecting the discipline that precedes it. This is what they won't tell you. You don't become a new person by vision boards alone. You become a new person when you stop giving the old one oxygen. That means saying no to what's easy. That means rejecting the praise that feeds your ego but starves your soul. That means showing up as your future self even when your current circumstances don't validate it. Edison failed 10,000 times, not because he lacked results, but because his identity said, "I am a man who persists until the world bends. Carnegie didn't just build steel, he built belief. A level of belief so intense, he transferred it to every man who worked for him. Lincoln wasn't just a president. He was a walking embodiment of resolve forged through ridicule, loss, and decades of being underestimated. Ford wasn't just an inventor. He was obsessed with proving one idea, that what the mind can conceive and believe it can achieve. They didn't wait for external permission. They operated from internal decisions. And that's the difference between those who rise and those who recycle the same year for 40 years and call it a life. Belief doesn't begin in the world, it begins in the mirror. And the problem is you've spent too long outsourcing your identity to people who've never built one of their own. Too long editing yourself to fit the expectations of cowards. Too long waiting for someone else to tell you you're allowed to become who you were born to be. But here's the hard truth. If your identity needs permission, it will always remain fragile. The unshakable ones. They're not the loudest in the room. They're the ones who can sit in silence and still feel certain. They're the ones who stopped chasing acceptance and started honoring alignment. Because at some point you realize this isn't about becoming more. It's about removing everything that isn't truly you. You don't need to stack more routines, read more books, or collect more advice. You need to get quiet enough to remember who you were before the world told you who to be. Clarity doesn't come from more noise. Clarity comes from subtraction. The moment you stop being everything for everyone, you start becoming something unshakable for yourself. It's not what you see when your eyes are open. It's what you decide is true even when everything around you contradicts it. You don't build an identity from what's visible. You build it from what's non-negotiable. When Ford envisioned a car affordable for the masses, the world laughed. But his identity was already rooted in a future the world couldn't see. When Disney sketched talking mice and castles on napkins, he was bankrupt. But his identity didn't care about bank accounts, it was anchored in imagination. When Oprah sat in a studio chair with no audience, no network backing her, and no blueprint, her identity whispered louder than the silence around her, "I was born for this." You see, unshakable identity doesn't need evidence. It creates evidence, because what you see is always a reflection of what you've chosen to believe. And belief, real belief, isn't passive. It's violent. It disrupts the past. It breaks generational patterns. It offends mediocrity. It forces you to choose between who you were and who you're becoming. That's why most people never change. Because belief isn't easy, it's costly. But you'll never rise higher than your self-concept. That's the glass ceiling no one talks about. Not money, not background, not even talent. The invisible script you repeat about yourself when no one's watching, that's your true identity. And it runs your life like a dictator behind the curtain. You want transformation. Rewrite the script. And not someday. Now. Purpose. It's not a destination. It's not a title. It's not something you figure out after you've got your life together. Purpose is a decision. It's the relentless refusal to live one more day out of sync with who you were built to be. And when your identity is rooted in purpose, everything shifts. Your schedule starts to make sense. Your relationships start to change. Your fears get smaller. Your standards get higher. You stop asking, "What should I do today?" and start declaring, "Here's who I am, and this is what people like me do." That's the difference between a scattered life and a focused one. That's the difference between endless motion and unstoppable momentum. People who lack identity try to prove themselves. People who are anchored in identity, they just move, quiet, focused, unbothered, because their yes is sacred and their no is immediate. No more debating mediocrity. No more negotiating with distraction. No more living on the terms of people whose opinions crumble under pressure. Let me speak to the person who feels like their past disqualifies them. That's a lie. In fact, your past proves you're ready, because pain is the birthplace of precision. You've been broken in ways that trained your discernment. You've walked through fire, and you're still standing. You've had seasons that almost erased you, and yet here you are. If you're still breathing, you are not done building. But the version of you that's coming, it won't emerge by chance. It will only rise by decision. You don't wait your way into a new identity. You command it into existence with your focus, your standards, your rituals, your values, your voice. And it won't be easy, because building a new identity means outgrowing the old one, and sometimes that identity has your old friends' faces, your family's tone, your past's comfort. But let them go. You weren't born to be understood. You were born to be aligned. Absolutely. Continuing from the intense inner conviction of Part 2 here is Part 3 of your cinematic voiceover script for discipline. The word itself sounds harsh, rigid, cold, almost oppressive, but only to the undisciplined. To those who are building something unshakable, discipline is the only kind of freedom that lasts. Discipline isn't punishment, it's alignment. It's the act of showing up to your destiny even when your feelings refuse to. Because when your identity is rooted, you don't need motivation. You operate from standards. You don't move because you feel like it. You move because that's who you are. Carnegie didn't become Carnegie by reacting to his moods. He built systems, non-negotiables, a mental architecture that didn't bend in the wind. Lincoln, when the country was torn in two, didn't govern by convenience, he governed by principle. You think Disney made magic because he waited for the right moment. No, he created it, day after day, storyboard after storyboard, through bankruptcies, rejections, and empty theaters. You want to be unshakable, then your identity has to be built from actions repeated so consistently that the world has no choice but to believe what you believe about yourself. That's what discipline does. It reprograms the subconscious through repetition until belief becomes reflex. And when it does, your environment stops controlling you. You control it, because the truth is, if you don't train your mind, the world will. If you don't choose your inputs, your identity becomes a patchwork of opinions, fears, and distractions you never consented to. And the scary part, most people never realize it. They scroll, they drift, they absorb the beliefs of people who haven't built anything real, and then wonder why they feel small when they try to rise. But you're not most people. You wouldn't be here if you were. You're here because something in you is tired of being dictated by the old code. Tired of shrinking around people you've outgrown. Tired of entertaining habits that whisper comfort and deliver regret. You're here because you're ready to delete the old programming and start writing something permanent. That doesn't happen with a journal entry or a weekend of clarity. It happens when your entire life becomes a declaration. This is who I am now, and anything that doesn't align with that is gone. Action. That's the cement, the proof, the substance behind the vision. Because identity without execution, that's delusion. And there's a reason the most successful people move fast, not recklessly, but decisively. They know action is identity made visible. You want to know who someone really is? Don't ask them. Watch them. Watch how they show up when no one's watching. Watch what they do when things go wrong. Watch how they treat the smallest responsibilities. Because you cannot rise into an identity your actions betray every day. You want to be a leader. Lead yourself. You want to be free. Start mastering your schedule. You want to command respect. Begin by respecting your own commitments. You're not building confidence, you're earning it through the silent integrity of following through. That's how legacies are built, not in public stages, but in private repetitions. You want to change how the world sees you. Change what you repeat. Because consistency is louder than talent. It's louder than charisma. It's louder than words. In the end, who you are is simply what you do most. Now pause, breathe, look around your life. Every habit, every pattern, every thought you've entertained without question, they've all been casting votes for the kind of identity you carry. But today is not about shame. It's about sovereignty. You have the power to change your entire trajectory with a single standard that refuses to bend. That's how the old self dies. Not with fireworks, but with a quiet, ruthless decision that says, I'm done letting the world tell me who I am. I decide from here. And the moment you say that, the world starts to move differently around you. You begin attracting what matches your integrity. You start repelling what once seduced you in weakness. You feel your soul stand taller, not because you've made it, but because you're finally walking like someone who believes they were made for more. And you were. Let me know when you're ready for the next 200-word section. We'll dive deeper into the final layers: gratitude, adaptability, resilience, and the climactic rebirth of the new identity forged in fire. This next part will hit like a mirror and a match. Ready when you are. Before you go out and conquer the world, you need to conquer something even harder: your need for applause. You need to get comfortable being unseen, unrecognized, and misunderstood while you build. Because true identity isn't proven by how loud your victory is, but by how quiet your consistency stays when no one is clapping. The oak tree never brags about its roots. It doesn't need to. It just stands. And the strongest people you'll ever meet, they're not the ones chasing attention. They're the ones building foundations in silence. Gratitude is part of that foundation. Not the fluffy kind that's posted on holidays, but the kind that says, I am grateful for every setback that didn't break me, for every closed door that redirected me, for every season that tested me and didn't take me. Because without those moments, you wouldn't be here. Gratitude reframes the suffering. It turns wounds into wisdom. And once you realize life wasn't happening to you, but for the development of your identity, you stop resisting your story. You start using it. And with that comes the next truth. Adaptability is survival. See, unshakable doesn't mean unmovable. It means unbreakable because you can move, because you bend before you snap, because you evolve instead of cling to what used to work. Ford didn't build an empire by staying loyal to the horse. He innovated ruthlessly, even when the world mocked him, even when the market wasn't ready. That's what you must do. Let go of identities that served a version of you that no longer exists. Let go of titles, routines, and rituals that feel safe, but are now too small. You're not here to live in the museum of who you used to be. You're here to outgrow it. Adaptability is the courage to say, this chapter is ending, and I'm not dragging it with me. And now we come to it. Resilience, the brutal, beautiful backbone of every unshakable life. Not resilience in quotes, not resilience on t-shirts, but the real kind. The kind that wakes up after betrayal, after loss, after everything you built burned down in front of you, and says, fine, I'll start again. But this time I'll build it stronger, wiser, cleaner. And this time I'll be too rooted to fall like that again. Resilience isn't found in books. It's earned in the days when you had every excuse to quit and didn't. It's built in the seconds after heartbreak when you stare at the mirror with nothing left and decide to get back in the fight anyway. It's carved into your bones when the world thinks you're finished and you're too busy rebuilding to answer. You don't bounce back to who you were. You rise into someone you've never been. That's resilience. That's rebirth. So now let's talk about the moment everything changes. It's not a date on a calendar. It's not a magic number in your bank account. It's not when the fear goes away. It's when you decide, I am no longer available for anything that contradicts the identity I've chosen. No more waiting to be ready. No more bending your truth to fit someone else's comfort. No more rehearsing your power behind closed doors, but never releasing it. You build an unshakable identity by refusing to entertain the temporary. You stop explaining. You start moving. You stop seeking permission. You start creating new blueprints. You stop waiting for the world to notice. You start becoming undeniable. That's the moment the shift happens. Not in your followers, not in your revenue, but in your energy. And when that shift hits, the world begins to mirror it back. People treat you differently. Opportunities respond. Doors open not because you begged, but because you've finally become the person that commands them. You are not your past. You are not your pain. You are not your fears, or failures, or forgotten seasons. You are the architect of what comes next. And from this moment on, every word, every thought, every act is brick by brick by brick. Build wisely. Build relentlessly. And whatever you do, do not bend. Let's talk about what no one claps for. The days that don't look heroic. The ones where your greatness shows up in the silence. Where the most important thing you do is not post, but persist. Where no eyes are watching, and no stage is waiting. Just you, your standard, and the mirror. This is the forge where the unshakable are built. Not in one massive leap, but in 1,000 private choices. When you wake up and don't feel like it, but act anyway. When you doubt yourself, but still follow through. When the old version of you whispers excuses, and you answer with action. Because this isn't about pretending, it's about becoming. Becoming so consistent with who you said you'd be that even your doubts give up and fall in line. The world trains you to believe that identity is a brand. A costume, something you market, curate, and package. But that's not identity. That's costume work. Real identity isn't what you present, it's what you protect. You don't build it for applause. You build it because it's who you refuse not to be. You've got to get ruthless with your habits. Why? Because you don't rise to the level of your ambition, you fall to the level of your systems. And systems are sacred. They're how you honor the identity you claim. They're how you prove to your brain every single day, I don't negotiate my future. You want clarity? Take action. You want confidence? Repeat action. You want power? Move, even when it's messy. Especially when it's messy. The greats weren't obsessed with being perfect. They were obsessed with staying in motion. Thomas Edison didn't wait for a perfect formula. He failed forward over 1,000 times because he had already decided that the identity of an inventor meant solving, not sulking. That's what you need. That same internal contract, where your next move isn't based on how you feel, but who you've decided you are. There's one final truth you need to swallow. You will lose people when you step into identity. You will confuse some, trigger others, lose applause from the ones who only loved your smaller self. But listen to me, they're not leaving you. They're leaving the version of you that made them comfortable. And if you sacrifice your identity to keep their comfort, you'll betray your legacy. Let them go. You are not here to be digestible. You are not here to be explainable. You are here to be undeniable. That requires shedding every version of yourself built from fear, built from fitting in, built from someone else's expectation. It requires silence sometimes, seasons where no one gets it. But your future will, and that's who you're building for. You're not building for today. You're building for the version of you who can finally breathe because you kept showing up when no one else believed. That's how unshakable identity is born. Not in a sudden epiphany, but in quiet rebellion. Daily defiance against everything that tries to pull you back. Discipline over drama. Standards over sympathy. Vision over validation. Every choice, every habit, every boundary you hold, every goal you protect, every excuse you slaughter is without mercy. These are not random acts. They are bricks, placed with precision, by a builder who knows exactly what they're becoming. So go, not to perform, not to prove. Go to embody, to carry your identity like it's your oxygen, like it's not optional, because it isn't. You don't become unshakable by accident. You build it, you protect it, you decide it, and then you never apologize for it again. If you've heard anything here today, let it be this. Your identity is not something you find. It's something you forge in fire in silence, in days the world forgets. And one day when they ask how you became unshakable, you won't need to explain. You'll just look them in the eye and keep walking. Because the ones who truly build don't need to scream. They carry a presence that can't be denied. And if you're still listening now, you're one of them. You don't need more time. You don't need more permission. You don't need a sign. This was the sign. This was the voice that called something ancient and powerful back to life in you. Now it's your turn to speak, not with words, with action. So if this message met you where you are, if it lit even a spark inside you, then fuel the fire. Like it, share it, drop a comment, and let the world know I'm building. Because someone else out there is waiting to hear the words that woke you up today. Don't let them scroll past their breakthrough. Be the echo that turns their silence into motion. This is not just a video. It's the first brick in your new foundation. Now go build the rest. Unshakable, unstoppable, unapologetically you.